Here's my conversation with Mark Synnott from his home in New Hampshire on 18 April 2022. You released an article in Salon online recently that was sort of a revelation, if you will, that shed new light on the Mallory and Irvine mystery. What the heck happened? It sounds like this is information that everybody in the world who has ever given even half of a care about Mallory and Irvine is right on top of this. This is like big stuff. So, right?
I thought it was, but it didn't go viral the way that I thought it would. A lot of people are like, whatever.
Yeah. So what happened?
I've got 3-4 years of my life, invested in this story. Like, yeah, kind of a big deal. Sort of quick synopsis of the story. Well, we went to Everest, you and I, in 2019 to try to solve the mystery of who really was the first to stand on the summit of Mount Everest. And as far as everyone knows, that was Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary in 1953. But students of Everest history know that there's a chance that George Mallory and Sandy Irvine summited in 1924, because they were last seen at 28,200 feet, still going strong for the summit. And that's only 800 feet below the top. And no one knows this story better than you. I mean, I was talking about how I've got 4 years into it. You've got like decades of your life.
Yes.
And
it's slight obsession. Yeah.
It's kind of, on the one hand, it's silly, like, oh, who cares? But we care, and the reason why we care is because it's history. It's about the spirit of adventure. It's about mountaineering. It's about Chomolungma. It's about a sacred mountain, and it just kind of gives us an excuse to have our lives revolve around this cool thing. And we all, like, it's pretty easy to be nihilistic in this world, and deep down I am, and I figured that out when I was really young. And I realized, okay, like, in order for me not to completely lose the plot, I need to create my own meaning in life. I need to, like, attach importance to things and care about them deeply. And that's what's going to give me the orientation and direction and purpose that I need in life. Because if I just sit there and existentially try to figure it out, like, there's nothing actually there, and this isn't working. And I tried to do that. So for me, it's mountains and adventure. And so, I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but
it's a good tangent.
This is why people like you and I, we care about this. We care about this story so much. And so in 2019, we used this question to launch this whole expedition, to go with this new research to try to find the remains of Sandy Irvine and the camera. And that involved me going out to these GPS coordinates in the yellow band. And I think I left the fixed ropes at like 27,700 feet, and did kind of like this adventurous little mission out to what we called the Holzell spot, which was all based on research by our friend, Everest historian, Tom Holzell. And it was you and I and Renan, we all decided that the intel was pretty solid, enough so that we were willing to risk our lives to see if we could figure this out, to see if Sandy was there. And I got to those GPS coordinates, and that's one of the most wild things I've ever done. And he wasn't there. And, we had heard a few rumors going into it that, hey, the Chinese already found Sandy and they found the camera. And it was just really, like, at first we did hear that. Officially, we heard that before the trip, but it was just very much rumor and innuendo. There was nothing backing it up. So we were like, okay, yeah, no, that's not really a thing. Then, so we came home and I spent a year or more writing this book. And I was going in deep and doing so many interviews and background and research and reading. And it kept popping up. And I don't want to exaggerate, but I think I could say, just offhand, maybe like 6 different separate sources who weren't getting it from each other, who are all saying the same thing. Oh, the Chinese already found the body. And so in the book, I wrote it up. Hey, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what might have happened. The Chinese might have found the body.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was just pure rumor, and I had no proof. But after the expedition, someone who wants to remain anonymous, this is actually another anonymous person. There's a lot of people who don't want to get on the wrong side of the Chinese and the Chinese government. But this person who had contacts with the Chinese Tibet Mountaineering Association told our guide, Jamie McGinnis, and this is in my book, yeah, it's not rumor. This actually really did happen. I heard about this after the expedition, after I was working on the book. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to the CTMA and I'm going to interview them and I'm going to ask them point blank. And I communicated with the CTMA and I told them, hey, I want to ask you some stuff about Mallory and Irvine. And I was communicating with the director and through an intermediary. And they said, okay, yes, sure, you should come. And I had plane tickets. I had a whole plan. I had reservations to go and see pandas in Sichuan province. That's how I was going to go in. I was going to go through Chengdu and then take the train to Lhasa.
Wow.
And then I started hearing about this novel coronavirus. I mean, this is in February of 2020.
Yeah.
And you know what happened? China shut down. I haven't been able to make it in since. It's been closed ever since. So 2 years later, 2+ years later, it's still closed. Americans, no one is going to China.
No one's on Everest other than nationals there.
So the book comes out and this guy contacts me and he says, oh, hey, I have information about the camera. And I've been sitting on it all these years because I wanted to write about it. I was going to write my own book about it, but I never got around to it. And I'm not actually a writer. And I think you're the guy. And I think you should do it. And you should tell the story. And the story is that the Chinese did find the camera in 1975 on the second expedition to the North Face of China. And the reason we know this is because in a meeting at the China Mountaineering Association in Beijing in 1984, there was a diplomat from the British Embassy at that meeting, and a woman named Pan Dao, who was the first Chinese woman to climb Everest and the second woman to climb Everest, summiting 11 days after Junko Tabei of Japan in 1975. She told this guy point blank, we found a body at 8,200 meters and it had a camera. And we brought that camera home and they tried to develop the film and it didn't turn out. The diplomat wrote a memo. He's a diplomat, so trained in the British Foreign Service. You write a memo. I do this now. I write memos. I like official, so like somebody can look at it later and be like, oh, okay, that actually really happened.
Huh.
That's the story. I wrote it up as a postscript for my book, and then I excerpted that in Salon. Honestly, I thought that someone else, there's sort of obvious other publications that could have ran with this story, and nobody wanted to do it.
Amazing.
And Salon did, and so I'm really thankful to them. And I put it out there, and you and I think it's a big deal. I mean, I shouldn't be downplaying it, but people aren't breaking down my door.
Yeah.
No one's called me for an interview. You're the first one.
So this is essentially what that means. First of all, that's amazing, and we had heard rumors. We even tried to call somebody from the car. Jamie got somebody on the phone about another body, not Mallory's body, and that gentleman hung up on us. If you recall, we weren't recording, of course. No memo was written either after that. But if they find a body in 1975 at 8,200 meters, that's about, or that's probably 1,200 feet higher than where Mallory's body was found in 1999. So that would leave us to speculate or know for certain that that was Sandy Irvine's body, right? Because Mallory's body, the way it was in 1999, was so frozen in the position that he obviously died in. I can't see them discarding the body and throwing it down and having it land so seemingly, perfectly.
I mean, there were 3 people who had died on Everest as of
75.
Yeah, well, actually 4, because there was a member of the Chinese expedition who died, who disappeared, I believe. There's other people who know this better, way better than me, like Hosel and mostly, Jochen Hemlab. But there was Maurice Wilson, who was the British mystic, and he never made it to the North Pole. So we know that he wasn't up in, the death zone.
We found one of his bones, by the way, in 1999 in Advanced Base Camp, and somebody just threw it back into the glacier. It was and found parts of his tent.
That's basically kind of where he was. So it couldn't be him.
Yeah.
And then there was a Chinese climber who died during that expedition, but that's like a modern thing, and they knew about that. He was one of their team members. In terms of old dead bodies, there was only 2, Mallory and Irvine. We know where Mallory was found eventually, right? We have GPS coordinates for that spot. That spot was not at 8,200 meters. It was more like 8,000 meters. It was 26,000, or no,
26,750,
about 26,700. So whatever that number works out to. The main thing is that location was way off the route, and the testimony from Pandau, they weren't out wandering around like Wang Hongbo, who found Mallory also in 1975, right? That's the groundwork for like all of Hosel's work and Jochen Hemlab for the discovery that you guys made in 1999. In 1970, so Wang Hongbo went way off, and there was a lot of analysis done in terms of where that was. That's not what Pandau was talking about. They were on their summit climb. They were on the route. There's a set place where we know that is. That her testimony from 1975 matches up with Xu Jing's testimony from 1960 for when he took the shortcut down. We're talking up in the yellow band here. So now, today, after you guys made the discovery in 1999, we can say that the body that Pandau is describing was not Mallory. So it had to be Irvine, and they also said that they found a camera. And so people can, sort of make their own assessment, as to what we have here. Personally, I think I can say with a fair amount of certainty that we were on a complete wild goose chase and that we risked our lives for no reason. I do believe that the Chinese found the camera. Part of the Pandau testimony is that not only that they have it, but that they had it in a Chinese museum. And I did some homework on that, and
What?
That, by the way, fit in with the rumor from other sources that I had heard. I did some research and I think I figured out what that museum might be. That's the next step, whether it's me or someone else goes to that museum. I'm quite sure that it's not sitting out on display, now the camera we're talking about. And if it's hidden away somewhere, I doubt they're going to pull it out and be like, oh yeah, actually. But I did kind of secretly have this hope where it could be something, where like you go to the director of the museum and you say, hey, like, here's the testimony, here's what we've heard. Do you think maybe this might be hidden back somewhere in some storage locker or some vault and that you guys forgot about it? Let's take a look. And like, oh, wow, you know what? Here it is. Here's the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And, that would be pretty cool. People have been looking for it for 100 years. I'm sure you're well aware that we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the famous Mallory and Irvine disappearance, and that the 1924 expedition. I'm sure there's going to be things going on with that. It would be really cool, to go to that museum and to find out. That's like the last little bit. But the other part about going to the base of the North Face with drones and like looking around for the body and crevasse and stuff like that, like I personally don't think that any of that really makes sense anymore. At least, from my perspective. And I think at this point, there's not a lot of people who have gone deeper into this than I have. There are some, but Jochen Hemleb, for example, and yourself, but I did go to the spot, to the Holzell spot, and I would not personally put any more time and effort into looking for the camera on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I think that deal is done. And so I feel like that's, in the end, in the final analysis, that's the contribution, that you and I have made to this story, which I think is significant. And I feel like we did figure something out. And the coolest part about it is that it sort of, it just sort of makes permanent the mystery. And it I think it just sort of solidifies the idea that the mystery will endure. And maybe we know what happened to the camera and that it was actually discovered. The film's gone. It didn't turn out, really, is what I think. And so we're never going to know. We're never going to know. And there's always going to be that slight chance that they did it. And I personally would never say that they didn't, because it's sort of like saying, that God doesn't exist. Like, who knows?
Really?
I'm not saying he does either, but it's that might be a little bit of a stretch there. That could, possibly be a step too far. But how could we say that they didn't do it? There's just no way to know for sure. And it's that little kernel of maybe, that stirs the imagination, like it has, for both you and I. And so I love the idea that that's where it's ended, and we'll never know. And so the mystery is going to go on and on and on.
That is so awesome. So real quick question that kind of puts an end to the body of Irvine being at 8,200 meters. So that body, does the location of that, and are you aware of where it was at 8,200 meters? Can you determine if he was using the ridge route to the top or if he was going along the face? Is there anything there? And then what did they do with the body? Did they discard it? Is it theoretical that they did throw him down and he landed in Holzell's spot? Or is he not even worth looking for anymore? And is he over the Kangshung face, for instance?
They said that Pandau said that they buried the body under some rocks. And I guess one thing that I haven't done, this is more of like a Holzell type thing, or somebody, or you could do it, is to look at the Chinese route which I think is pretty close to the standard route, and figure out
Mhm.
where 8,200 meters is. And I think what you'll see is it's terrain that has been crossed over every which way
Mm.
by a lot of people, climbers, but also people who have been searching, and, Jake Norton and all of his
Jamie.
various
Yeah.
expeditions, and
Yeah.
Adrian Ballinger,
Mm.
yourself, and, Tom Pollitt, and
Andy, right? Andy, and
Andy
yeah,
Pollitt,
right.
and the various like Sherpa expeditions that have done, their own searches.
Hmm.
Um, so I think we all agree. I know Jake sees it this way, that there's nowhere else to look, and we're sort of at this point where if the body was there, somebody would have found it, and so I think at some point the body was removed, and what I think that would look like is basically just kind of tumbling it down the mountain into the
Hmm.
abyss. I feel like that's kind of what the Chinese would do. Not that they would do it in a disrespectful way, but that
No.
there, there's an effort underway, as you well know, to clean the mountain up and to
Hmm.
not have so many dead bodies laying all over the place. It's unseemly, and it's not really what anyone wants to see. And so both sides of the mountain, there's efforts that are being made
Hmm.
to clean it up in that respect. And it's pretty much impossible to bring bodies down from up there. It's just not. It's
It's a
not
lot of work.
safe. It's not possible. So
It's a
I
lot
don't
of
think the body's there. I think they found the body in 1975. I think they found the camera. I think they brought the camera home. I think they tried to develop the film and it didn't turn out. And then for whatever reason, and then for a while there, it was just kind of a thing. It wasn't being talked about, but it was talked about that that body was up there by numerous members of the 1960 and the 1975 expedition. And there's no reason why they would just make that up.
now.
So that's in my book a real thing. And at some point, the body was either flushed off the mountain naturally by an avalanche, or pushed out of the way, or moved, and maybe moved, but then once it wasn't, kind of frozen in, it was washed away by an avalanche or the wind. And so I think the
Mm.
body's gone. The body without the camera, which potentially would have this evidence that could change history, like, it should be left alone at this point. I mean, if we can say that the camera's not there, then there's no reason anymore to look for it. And so
Mhm.
I think that deal is done.
That's pretty cool. That's decisive, and yeah. So a lot of elements of the mystery will keep people looking. And there's the seeds, the kernels of pop opportunity for another sleuth who's out there interested in finding, getting to the bottom of it. Yeah, because if that film is destroyed, obviously it'd be cool to have that camera and return it to the Somerville family, right? Because ostensibly it was Howard Somerville's camera. That would be pretty cool. So yeah, and you don't even have to climb for that. You just have to get to China and go into some dusty old back room and have them pull out amidst all their other artifacts and things.
Things that
Yeah,
that could
I
be a good.
hope I hope I will be. I hope I'll be that guy.
Cool.
And one thing that's working in my favor, apart the fact that I sort of pulled the lid back on a fair bit of stuff, but the third pole is being translated into Chinese,
Mm.
and so it will be read over there. And I feel like, in some way, shape, or form, that has to be, giving the whole story a stamp of approval.
Hmm. Yeah.
China opens up, I will endeavor to go and to see if the camera might actually be there, and that would be a cool. And maybe I don't know. Is there such a thing as like a postscript to a postscript?
Post. Yeah. PPS, right? At the end of a
Yeah,
letter or an
there you
email.
go.